Hey guys, welcome to Free Academy Live. This is episode 7, I believe. We're super
Eight.
excited. 8, episode 8. Oh yeah, that's right. We're super excited to have on a new guest named Matt here that we haven't had on before. And then we also got Daniel on with us as well. He's been on a few, and of course Michael Fielding and Jared Reyes on here. And today we're going to talk, at least at first, a little bit about minimum wage, and then probably that might be a short conversation, and then transition maybe into our views or perceptions of the purpose of government. And we'll just kind of let everything free flow, so don't have much more on the agenda other than that. So Matt, if you'd like, I'll pass it over to you. And Matt was saying that he would enjoy if at the beginning we kind of shared a little bit of our viewpoint on from maybe a political standpoint, just to get that out in the open from the get-go, to help maybe make some of our responses and answers make more sense and provide some context. So Matt, do you want to take off and I guess maybe share with the viewers your general political philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of talk
Yeah.
about general political philosophy, I think, but I think a good way to talk about it is in concrete examples of what we would sort of like to see that's different, for instance, than what we have now.
Mhm.
So for instance, politically right now, we have the, interests of 300 million. For me, I'm going to stick just kind of to U.S. politics. We have the interests of around 300 million people being decided legislatively and judicially by very few people. I would like to see that number increased
Mhm.
by a great deal, and like local control of sort of political access be kept in the hands of people who it actually impacts on a daily basis, the things that they see in the world. Uh, I'm not sure exactly how to do this, but I guess that's what I would like to see. I would definitely like to see a lot less. Uh, the size of corporations, I feel, are far too large, and I think that there should be some sort of uh, trigger, maybe that's a dangerous word, in place when a corporation gets too large. The society, whatever is going on around it, checks it, puts it in place, makes sure there's not more political power coalesced in one spot than there is, things like that. So yeah, and obviously I'd like to see like the United States stop going to war in foreign countries and things like that. I think that
Mhm.
we don't have really that many people trying to attack us, and I think the ones that are trying to attack us because of things that the United States military, the United States government has done. So I wish we would stop doing that. I wish the police force didn't uh, didn't use force at all unless it was absolutely warranted and someone's like actively trying to kill someone or something like that. So, but in all other cases, I think that the way that the police pursue people in the communities in which they live is problematic, um, just on a very basic level. So concretely, I would like to see that change, and police officers be more educated in the first place, and that just generally speaking about like society and culture and things like that. And also, if they do exist, police officers, which I don't even know if we need that role in our society, but that's another thing. These are just two concrete examples I'd like to talk about with
Yeah.
the military and the police force, because I believe when I first turned in, I heard talk of like of the sort of extortionist police state and something like that, and I definitely want to do away with that as well. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
sorry
Yeah,
for talking so long.
no, that was awesome. And then Daniel, do you want to jump in next and kind of give us a similar background, maybe some concrete things that you find that you would seek change in as far as the government that is presiding over the U.S. right now?
Yes, the government is very difficult to change. Change does not come in leaps and bounds, so I believe we need to make small changes from where we currently are, and over time, we're able to make more and more changes that way. So I think we need to increase the minimum wage. A lot of people are struggling to provide for themselves and their families on only several dollars an hour. and I think we need to tax the wealthy more. There is a growing wage gap in between the richest among us and the poorest, and that ultimately is not good for us as a society.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I guess I'll jump in next. My general viewpoint is that um, I don't believe in the initiation of force, and so I'll take that line of thought and to follow it all the way to its root. To me, I don't see a way that a government can exist and that ideal be met. So I'm of the opinion that we don't actually need a government to operate as a civilized society, and so you can probably extrapolate from that idea that I do oppose minimum wage in general, as well as an increase in minimum wage, amongst other things. But I think just coming from the notion that I think society could exist relatively peacefully without a state involved, and with that involved, I guess with that ideology, you can imagine that minimum wage as well as wealth redistribution are things that I oppose. But I would also point out that I agreed with a lot of what Matt said. For example, when you talked about big corporations, I'm not against big businesses in general, but I do think that if maybe some of the regulatory environment didn't exist and big corporations had more skin in the game from a liability standpoint, that corporations wouldn't be able to get as big as they do. So I think maybe in a stateless society that might be a problem that self-regulates just by a matter of the fact that I just think through limited liability corporations and the laws behind how all that works, that there's not enough skin in the game for these companies to really be liable for all their actions. Um, but yeah, I guess that's a synopsis of my position. Mike, you want to take over?
Sure. So again, I agreed with a lot of what everybody said, which is so cool that I think we all have similar goals. Like, I don't like the inequality between the rich and the poor either. I definitely don't like the foreign wars. Um, I guess where I come from is a position of skepticism just about everything, and I'd say all my other conclusions are based off the position of skepticism. And what I'm just not convinced is that it's ever a good idea to threaten someone with jail unless they pay you. And that's how the government is founded. That's how taxes work, is if you don't pay up, you go to jail. And I think we should just point to, I would label that extortion, because it's, issuing a threat unless somebody gives you money. And I would just label it evil always and try to fight it everywhere we see it, whether it's the mafia, whether it's a drug cartel in Mexico, or whether it's the United States government. It's just a bad ethical practice to cage people unless they give you money. And if you can't have anything else that the government provides without threatening to cage people, then I think we just shouldn't have it. And if the roads are worse, so be it. I think they'll be better without the inefficiencies introduced by government. But if they're worse, at least people weren't threatened with violence. And I guess that's the summation of my ideas.
Yeah. So yeah, good points. And so that kind of, I think, sets the context of at least some general background principles for all of us. So if we want, and we've kind of expressed probably like the general idea on minimum wage, but let's jump in and have a quick conversation about that, and then we can expand it maybe again to government in general. So let's talk about minimum wage. Matt or Daniel, either of you want to jump in first regarding your thoughts on minimum wage as a concept, and then more specifically on the idea of raising minimum wage?
So many people across the country have been protesting for $15 minimum wages. There have been walkouts by workers at fast food restaurants. And that would be just so beneficial for those people. They would be able to buy more nutritious food and perhaps save for college educations to propel these people out of their poverty.
Yeah. And I would say, do you think that the people that you're referring to, do you believe that the skills that they're providing or that are required for them to do their job competently are worth $15 an hour?
Uh, as long as there aren't robots replacing them that can do it for cheaper, then certainly these people should be paid a living wage.
Uh,
Can I
and
jump in?
yeah, yeah, definitely jump in.
So I would like to start off by saying that to me, the system of economics that is currently available to us in this country is not the only possible system. I would first like to say that. And then I would also like to say that to me, this is a moral issue, and I'll explain more what I mean by that in just a second. But I wrote up a little something right before we came on. I'd like to read it at this time. So first, I'd like to start out with a matter of definition and define a term known as the point of marginal utility. And this is a point at which a person has enough material goods in which to have the capability of leading a life of dignity. It is assumed by this that to have this capability, people need to have enough nutritional resources, shelter, and the opportunity to engage in work that benefits them to achieve this end. So the idea is that they have the opportunity to get the things that they need for instance, eat and have a place that they lay their head. So that's just a definitional sort of assumption of the argument. That's how I'm using this term. The first premise in the argument is, in the event a person who is a member of a community labors, whether mentally or physically, a full week of work, the qualifications of which are determined by the community, that's to say the qualifications of what is work, or whatever, what a full work week is, in a position recognized by the society to qualify as an occupation in which taxes and licenses are required, the compensation for the labor ought to exceed the amount of marginal utility. Does that make sense? So you should get enough from your labor, your full labor as a member of the community, however large the community. You can imagine a village if you wish. You can imagine a city. And so that's the first premise. And let's see, is there anything else?
Can I have a quick
It's sort of the moral principle that I'm putting forth in this
Yeah.
in this view. So yeah.
So what constitutes in this case the marginal utility? You said you want in a society who puts in a full a full work week of labor to receive enough compensation to meet this level of marginal utility.
Well, like I said, the point of marginal utility is the point at which a person has enough material goods in which they have the capability of leading a life of dignity. It is assumed by this view that to have this capability, people need to have enough nutritional resources, shelter, and the opportunity to engage in work that benefits them to achieve this end.
Yeah, I guess the part that I struggle with is the dignity part, because a life with dignity to me is potentially a very subjective position to decide what's dignity and what's not. So it would be the community in that example that determines what a life of dignity is.
So, I sort of anticipated this, and here's another part of what I would like to say. If a person has the clear opportunity to these things and rejects the opportunity, it is not upon anyone to force that person to do labor for the purpose of them having these material needs. People should be able to pursue their desires up to the point at which there is conflict with others. Now, when conflict with others arises, I think in that case, an agreement between parties may be arranged, right? Now, I also believe that the agreement that is reached should at least be able to, if one of the parties decides that they wish, they should be able to go to some arranged political arbitration that exists to decide matters of dispute. Obviously, this can be problematic in many ways, but I just wanted to anticipate sort of that and say that Yeah, I mean, of course, the community itself would be the ones deciding this. But the idea that I'm trying to get put forth is that in any community, I feel like whether it be a village or a city of 10 million people, I I would hope that the people that I live with, at least in that community, would think that if someone did something that is considered to be a job and they actually went to work 40 hours a week or whatever is decided, who knows what that is, that they should at least get sort of their they should have the opportunity to, like I say, live a life of dignity, which I think people can agree on it to some degree. And if people don't want that, at least they have the opportunity for it. And then if people don't want that, they can try something else. But it's always should be available to them. I'm talking a lot, and I'm only through the first premise. If I could read through the next three premises, or two premises in conclusion, and then just let the conversation go, I would really just appreciate. I'll read.
Cool, go for it.
All right. So the second premise is that in the current political and economic reality, money is a necessity to live. The third premise, in the current political reality, or to live a life of dignity, in the current political reality, there are many hourly wage jobs uh, in which the people working them depend on the money they gain from the jobs to reach the point of marginal utility. And the conclusion is simply, therefore, the hourly wage-based jobs ought to pay enough to provide the money that people need to reach the point of marginal utility. Now, I phrased the argument in this way just really quickly to avoid the idea that, well, we don't have to live in a political reality like that. And I would just like to say that I don't think that we need to, but we do. And now I'll shut up.
No,
Uh,
that's great.
yeah, good points. And Mike, you haven't spoken in a while. You want to jump in and share some thoughts?
Sure. Okay, so I guess the problem that I see with that is who should pay for the people who are not skilled enough to find someone who's willing to voluntarily pay them that much. So, say I'm just an unskilled person and nobody wants to pay me $15 an hour because they don't think I'm worth it because I don't add that much productive value to their business. Who should cover the expense between what the person's willing to pay me and what the state is mandating they pay me?
Yeah, so if anybody else wants to take that question, but I can field that and offer some sort of reply.
I'd love to hear your reply, Matt, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I would say in that case that the calculations that are being used to determine that a person's value is not worth what it's worth, either those need to change, or either the sort of the job itself or the business needs to go away.
So, do you think that might drive up the unemployment rate if the businesses that can't afford to pay people $15 an hour just disappear?
Well, I don't know that. I don't. Why would I assume that that is going to happen?
I would
I
say
don't
that
know. That's what I would assume. I guess I was projecting.
some
um,
businesses operate.
Under the current capitalist system and the calculations that are being used, I agree, and that's probably what would happen. In which case, those calculations should change, like I said before, or the jobs should go away. But the
so
point I'm making is,
I guess if like
I want to
yeah,
return
go ahead.
to the,
Sorry.
I want to return quickly to the moral principle that I believe is involved, and I want to imagine like being in a situation where there's like 20 people, and the moral principle that's involved here, I think, is that if all 20 people sort of put in whatever you can look at and see as an honest day's work, then they should get at least to be able to have the fruits of their labor, or whatever you want to call it, and be able to live what I like to call a life of dignity.
I would jump in and say that there are definitely some businesses that exist where the margins are such that if you wanted to try and enforce them to pay $15 an hour, either they would go out of business or they would increase the cost of those goods, um, because that's the only way they would be able to stay in business. So in one scenario, the prices go up. In another scenario, the business closes and all those jobs are gone. But I would argue in either one of those scenarios, the purchasing power of the individual is harmed, because if the business goes out of business, well, now they have, in theory, these people are left making $0 an hour instead of, let's say, 10. If it stays in business, um, and they raise the cost of the goods and services that that business provides, then that washes away the gains that they have from putting the money in their pocket.
Um, okay, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but once again, I think that in that case, which I would also like to say that I'm not sure how you can make the assumption that the economy wouldn't adjust or somehow like to given that we're following certain moral principles that at least people should have the opportunity to make lives in the world. And that, like, I get that it could have some impact, but I've never seen any statistics that indicate that jobs are lost or that wages go down after a minimum wage increase. I have seen evidence that they go down after a tax decrease, though. So
I
I'm not.
could hop in if y'all don't mind. I have some ideas. So I did look at the statistics for all 50 states and DC, and there's a correlation between an increase in the minimum wage and an increase in the unemployment rate. But that doesn't prove anything. It was barely above
Yeah, it
um,
was, to
zero,
be
so
fair,
it's mainly random.
yeah, it's
But
pretty.
we've talked a lot about dignity, or we've been thinking about it, and one of the parts of dignity to me is not being threatened with violence and not having other people try to kidnap me unless I obey their laws. And I think that especially comes into play with the minimum wage, because if I'm willing to sell my labor for $10 an hour and somebody is willing to pay me $10 an hour, but they're not willing to pay me 15, why should we be prevented from transacting? I know personally we can live on very little money, and I think it's a little, I don't know, especially coming from the United States, to think that, earning too little money is undignified. If we talked, to somebody from most other countries in the world, $10,000, $20,000 a year, they're millionaires. They're just super excited to make that much money. And for us to say, oh, that's not enough to live a dignified life,
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's just insulting to the poor people of the world.
Yeah, I find it a bit demeaning considering the median income for the rest of the world is 9,700 something dollars. Um, I find it I find it strange for us to talk in a way that says, regardless of your ability or skill level, that you deserve. For example, we'll just use a concrete example of $15 an hour, because I think the U.S.'s idea of what it takes to get by is really out of whack with the rest of the world, which maybe you could say that's a good thing, or you could argue it's a bad thing, but I think that's the equivalent to saying that 90% of the world has no dignity, with the life that they're living. And I think there's definitely a group of people that would love to improve their situation, but
Well, I didn't say that $15 globally was the life of dignity. I never said that.
yeah, no, I was just trying to put a number on it for the
Said
sake.
that anyone should be forced to work in any circumstance, nor did I say that people should be kept through violence or physical force under threat of kidnap for working for less than $15 an hour. There should just be an opportunity that if someone in the United States, and $15 an hour, I don't even believe that. I'm just talking about the minimum wage. Generally speaking, for a particular area, like I said, I like local control. and not like centralized control. But I think they should have the opportunity for this to be enforced, right?
Well, enforced. How do you enforce it without violence?
Well, see, the person who's being taken advantage of or exploited, they would have to go and initiate the claim. The claim wouldn't come from a vacuum. The claim would come from a real place of injustice. So it's not like people are like if people want to work for less than the minimum wage, they can. I'm sure that they can do that. If that's like
Not legally.
well,
That's all the black. That's the
I
black
think they
market for
should be
labor.
able to do that. How's that? So that's
But if you believe in the increasing the minimum wage, then that becomes whatever that number becomes. Anything below that is illegal. So not you, but anyone who purports that, then that means anyone once the minimum wage gets increased, anyone who is willing to work for less than the minimum wage, because they know their skill, it's easier for them to find employment if they, for a certain rate that's below the minimum wage, they're now enabled to offer that up. You know, as Michael said, if let's say the minimum wage is 15, and you have a really hard time finding employment at 15, meaning that there's a lot of competition at $15 an hour, even though that might be the minimum wage, and you just don't, your skills don't seem to warrant being hired. But you're willing to take 10 in this system where you have a legalized and enforced minimum wage that the individual can't work for 10 even if they wanted to unless they're willing to turn to the black market for labor.
like I said before. If there are a lot of people like that, then there should be a change in the structure of the economic system.
Yeah, and Daniel, you want to jump in with some thoughts?
Oh,
Yeah, hey Daniel,
I
you
have
want
some thoughts if you don't want to.
oh, my mic cut out.
Go for it.
The skills necessary to work these minimum wage jobs are not very high. I don't know if you need to be able to read to work at McDonald's or not. The skills, I think, are to a large extent present in the United States to perform these minimum wage jobs.
So, wait, are you saying the skills required are really low? For example, in the McDonald's situation, is that what you were saying?
Essentially, yes. Almost anybody would be able to do a job like that.
So, given that almost anyone's willing to do it, does it make sense to artificially enforce a price for that type of labor when there's people that are willing
Yes.
to do it?
Yes.
You can't
Okay,
just have
well,
these
back
people.
to enforcement, though. A law is just a threat of violence written on paper. So I don't understand. You said that, say someone wants to work for 15, but a business isn't willing to pay them. You're saying that the minimum wage should be enforced. So that should, like, I don't get where you get. How do you make it happen after you say it should happen? Like, you have to have somebody go hand them a fine, right? If they don't do it, is it a fine-based enforcement mechanism? Because then, what if they refuse to pay the fine?
Outright.
Then eventually you have to send somebody with a gun, right? How do you make it happen without violence?
Look, I don't understand, like, for instance, where the idea that the government is showing up and arresting business owners, or there's any problem with violence against business owners who are paying people too little in the United States. I don't know where that's come from. Um, I see violence against black people by the police. I think that's pretty clear. I don't see violence against people who own businesses. I don't see where that's coming from, or who have tons of money. We're going to put you in jail. Some people get tax evasion, whatever. Some of them spend a couple years in jail. But typically, the people with a lot of money that are employing a lot of people, I don't see where this complaint of, like, being kidnapped and violent, like, where does
Sure,
that?
but that's the threat. That's at the end of the day. Like, first they send you a fine. But if you don't pay the fine, then what?
This is a systemic problem that people have a problem complying with the minimum wage. This is a systemic problem.
Well, what I would say is,
Uh,
for example, what they'll
I gotta go
do.
pick my daughter up, and I'm sorry I have to leave with that, but I'll watch the rest of y'all's video.
Okay.
no, that's great. Maybe we can pick up here
Thank
some
you,
other time. But I know we were holding you up. So thank you so much. See ya.
Um, man. Okay. Well, I don't. Just to give an example of a business that this happens a lot of times with construction businesses or roofing businesses, for example, that they are known to be big employers of black market labor. Um, they get shut down when they are found to be paying people for services below minimum wage, or just even at minimum wage, but illegal immigrants. And so there is violence against, that business gets wiped out. And so enforcing the minimum wage inherently causes anyone who is unable to get employed at whatever the minimum wage level is to turn to black market labor or to not participate in the workforce at all. And in the event they turn to black market labor, that employer is then at risk of huge fines and being shut down. So I guess that would be an example of a business facing risk by employing people for less than minimum wage.
Definitely. And I think just because people are acquiescing the vast majority of the time, they see the threat. Maybe they don't see the threat, but they see the fine come in the mail, and they don't refuse to pay the fine because they know at the end of the day, if they refuse to pay, eventually something physical is going to happen to them. And so, yeah, the vast majority of the time, the threat is enough. You don't have to go in person, but that's the violence I see. It's not happening because people are scared, but the threat is still underlying all that paperwork. Um,
Yeah.
anyways,
I
maybe we
don't.
should close it out just because, I don't know. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, it does feel weird to continue the conversation without one of the members who brought forth a lot of the ideas. But what is confusing is I recognize that people making more money does feel good. I'm not against. I wish everyone made more money. I certainly have zero desire to keep people from earning more money, but I do think that there are certain businesses where the skills required have a value, and to try and artificially change that value, I just don't think it works, because at some level, most of these businesses have a margin that payroll can't go above, or it becomes unprofitable, and therefore the jobs go away completely, or they increase the cost to the consumer. Either way, it kind of wipes out the point of the minimum wage to begin with. Um, so I don't see it, and I guess if raising minimum wage is good, then why stop at 15? Why not go? If there's no downsides, then why not $25 or $30 an hour? Yeah,
Any final thoughts, Daniel, maybe? I don't know. I'm ready to close it out. And let's pick it up again, though, because it was a fun discussion for sure.
yeah, but just on that concept, Daniel, do you have any thoughts on why stop at, well, let's say 15 is the number that people want. Like as a society, people are throwing around 15. So let's go with that number. But if minimum wage is good and there aren't adverse consequences, why stop at 15?
Yeah, you there, Daniel?
Oh, I'm having some trouble with my microphone.
Okay. No worries. Let's just close it out, guys, and we'll pick it up soon. I'll send out another email when we have more time and pick it back up.
Awesome, that sounds good.
All right, take it easy, guys. And for anybody who's watching this, check out freeacad.com for all the other videos under the Free Academy Live podcast link. And if you'd like to participate, leave a comment, get in touch with one of us. And if you have an idea for an episode, that would be awesome. You can even host it for us if you'd like. So please get involved, and looking forward to chatting with all you guys soon. Peace, love, and anarchy.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.